listening to the Ottawa Real Estate Podcast with your hosts, Paul Stevenson, David Warren, and Greg Campbell. Let's see what's going on in the world of real estate today.
Stevenson. I'm a mortgage agent. I'm here, as always, with Mr. Gregory Campbell, realtor extraordinaire, and David Warren, mortgage agent extraordinaire. I'm also a mortgage agent extraordinaire. I just didn't want to say that about myself. So here we are, the three of us, the three amigos. We are back. We're live. Gentlemen, how we doing? How's the week? Welcome to everyone who's tuning in.
Welcome to everyone. I'm just, I just realized that I needed to send this link out. So there you go.
Your mic sounds, you sound like you're
Greg's
in the other room, Gregory.
He's fading away on us.
I sound like I'm in the other room.
Yeah.
Is that better?
No.
Not really, but we'll survive. We'll survive. Somebody will adjust it. Week's been going well while Greg's figuring that out. Week's been going well.
What just happened there? My wife just said she can't hear me either.
Yeah. Anna knows. Yeah, no, we're live. Guys, I was looking at my son has recently created his own YouTube channel. This is now a thing, right? Kids have their YouTube channels. He's pushing out shorts. And he had a couple videos that out of nowhere, just as he called them, went viral with a few thousand views, which he's pretty happy about. But it forced me to look at our statistics. I was going through the analytics with him. His channel, our channel, was pretty cool. But I noticed that most of our listeners are actually not on YouTube. So I feel like by doing these live shows, it's good for the interaction, but I feel like we're missing a large segment of listeners because it seems a lot of the listeners are actually on Apple Podcasts. So I want to give a shout out to everyone on Apple Podcasts that we are real people. And if you're listening to this, make sure to find us, seek us out on YouTube and follow along. We're not floating heads as Greg seems to be tonight in his black back.
Am I better now?
You're better. You're better.
I sound better now. Sound strong and healthy.
You're healthy.
Bigger, better, stronger. Bigger, better, stronger, Greg. You look great.
Thank you. I'll keep this mic very close to my mouth so I can just sound deep.
It looks huge. It looks like the size of your head from here. I don't know if that's just me, but
I want to sound as smooth, sexy, and sensual as possible tonight for our listeners.
Oh, wow.
Silky Greg.
Wow. This is a late night call-in show, clearly.
It's like butter, baby.
Smooth like butter.
All right. I'm here. Let's go.
So, guys, wild week. It's been wild. We've seen inflation up today. Okay, housing starts increased last month. A lot of job loss last month. A lot of shifting in the market. Speculation hour on what's going to happen with the rate in September. Lots of headlines. Lots of chaos. Where should we start? What do you guys want to talk? What do you want to touch on first? We got a question waiting in the chat, but anyone listening, if you're watching this live, throw your questions in there. We'll make sure to touch on all of them. But I'm interested to hear what you guys think. Where do you want to start, and how do we even start? How do we do this? What are we doing? Why are we here?
Those are good questions. I couldn't really answer any of them. No. Why are we here? What are we doing?
Yeah, we don't know anything. I mean, do we ever know anything? We generally we're right, but do we know anything? With the new starts, I thought it was funny, man. We saw that article came out. What did it say? New build starts up 40% suddenly. I think it's a bunch of shit.
Yeah.
I think it's fake news, to be honest. What did you say? 40% up in new build starts, and then 40,000 contractors laid off last month. Is that what it was?
Well, it was 44,000 construction jobs.
Yeah, just construction jobs lost
last month alone. July, which is like typically should be like, one of the busiest construction months, especially in Canada. We only have like a 6-month window, 8-month window to build in, like to get the majority of the work done. So, there's a lot of, it's kind of crazy, like 44,000 jobs leaving. Like that seems like we're going the wrong direction. It should be like a new creation of 100,000 construction jobs to get these homes built, right? Get everything back under control.
Well, that's what I mean. It's like, who posted the news first? 40,000 or 40% increase in new build starts, or 44,000 jobs lost. Which news came out first? Which one was late?
Yeah, it's true.
They weren't talking to each other, I don't think. I don't know. I mean, that's clearly, not the point of that, but it's definitely interesting because it's a contradiction if you just think of it in the obvious way, but who knows? And in terms of where that's going to go, what do you think about that, Dave?
I mean, I think to both your points, like how I'd be curious as to when that research was. I mean, I guess it's recent because it's talking about June's housing starts. But to your point, I mean, 40,000 tradespeople laid off last month. That's pretty significant, I find, for that market. And if it was a thriving market, then that wouldn't be the case. Laid off are salaried, employed tradespeople,
right?
At a larger construction firm or union where they're doing the larger builds, the condo builds and their track housing and things like that. Those aren't, if you're a general contractor, sole proprietor, that doesn't cake into those statistics. You're not being laid off. So if those 40,000 are with larger builders, and then that's pretty significant, I would think.
That's a really good point. Yeah, because you're right. A lot of those kind of smaller builders have, maybe they have I don't know, even know how big the crews would be. Like maybe 10 people doing a build. So, and like you said, there's probably a percentage of those that are skilled laborers, maybe working for themselves, subcontracted, et cetera. So these are probably like actual salaried positions or people. So it's a huge number.
Yeah. But I mean,
and maybe they're not doing in the 40%. Maybe that doesn't include that demographic. And maybe the 40% is all these independent builders that build like 5 a year. And that's why they're saying there's a 40% increase, because there's a bunch of builders that build 5 homes a year and they're just playing the news.
Yeah, they built 5. Now they're building 6. Like they're up 40%, or sorry, building 7 now, building 7.
Yeah. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, I hope it's factual. I hope it's accurate. And like we say,
the starts
all the time, the starts are like starting, that's, if it is up for units starting to be built, then I would actually say that's a great thing. By and large, for the market and for rent rates and future rent rates and pricing. But I think collectively we clearly don't really believe it all that much, but I hope it's true. I hope it's factual.
Yes.
Yeah, and Stephen, if you want to bring up that chart, if you can, we had a chart that was regarding like housing starts, kind of showing over the last, I think it was, I had the chart here myself, since 2017, so over the last 6 or 7 years, by thousands of units, and you can see that the chart kind of it's just kind of steady ebb and flow, a bit up, bit down. But knowing what we know, like knowing that immigration was going to increase, start of, I guess, 2015, but like the plan took place, let's say 2020, 2021, pandemic, like we should be seeing like a massive uptick in housing starts. Like this should be like an outrageous, like, oh my God, look how many starts there are this month, not dips. And like, this is a pretty steady, there's really no uptick. Like it's up, it's down, it's up, it's down, it's up, it's down. Like it's pretty consistent. And like this June's obviously up, but if you look at, let's say last month compared to 2017, they're almost at par. So like the starts haven't increased. Like that's really the end of it. And that's obviously believe it or not, to get more homes, you have to build them. Right. So,
and that's what got us to
imagine
today.
That. Yeah.
That's what got us to today.
Yeah.
In the current market.
Yeah. So going back to the CPI, so 3.3, they were saying that some of the major impacts in that was gas prices, which I'm sure, the carbon tax and everything is certainly increasing the cost of gas. And I think it is going to go up because it's going to triple. So we're going to see gas prices probably go up another 15 to 20 cents a liter. And interest costs, mortgage interest costs. So there you have it. Like the actual inflation is now staying high because of the interest rates, the Bank of Canada's hikes. However, this is also, we're looking at year over year, right? So this is compared to last July, as opposed to like, this is just when rates started to kind of spike up. So we're seeing like a huge lagging indicator here. Like I think the next 6 months, we're going to see these numbers come out pretty dramatically. Go ahead, Dave.
I think it's going to be really, like, that inflationary number is going to be really sticky. I think it's going to maintain around where it's at. It's not going to drive down. I mean, really, the biggest hurdle, I think, that they're focusing on and that I'm reading is food costs. Like that is the underlying indicator that they're really trying to drive down, and what they're really trying to kind of get that under control from an inflationary perspective of that underlying interest and gas, interest, mortgage payments, and kind of that category. I think makes up about 30% of that CPI, or 28% or something around there. So I think they aren't so focused on that, but they still, as a broader base, everyone looks at that overall CPI number. But I think it's going to be pretty sticky and not get to that 2% that they're really gunning for. We've seen with that number coming out of the unemployment and with that CPI, like we've in the last few days, we've seen the bond rates. We talked about them last week, ticking up, but they've jumped pretty dramatically this week again, up another 7 basis points today to 4.107, which is very, it's kind of been floating around using that, and that's on the 5-year, what the 5-year fix is assigned to or pegged against. 4% has kind of been that resistance point for the 5-year, and it's really kind of crossed over it, and up by 10 basis points over it is pretty significant. I think we're going to see those that might be looking at maybe converting from a variable to a fixed or renewing over the next four months. Like, I really implore you to lock in a rate. Like tomorrow, rates are going to go up this week again, like fixed rates.
Fixed rates are going to go up this week.
Yeah. Like they bumped, like a lot of lenders bumped them up end of last week. And with where the bonds for the 5-year finished last week, compared to this week, it's already, like, it's up pretty dramatically. I'm trying to bring up the chart right now. I think it's up about 20 basis points since like Thursday or something. It's not loading for me properly. But again, today we're up seven basis points. So it's 0.07 is, which is pretty dramatic. So I would say that fixed rates are going to keep climbing higher this week. And as inflation kind of maintains like its stickiness, and same with, gas, like oil, I don't think will ever come down. OPEC does a phenomenal job of maintaining that gas price and oil cost of oil being high. I think we're going to kind of continue to see that fixed rate climbing. So
what do you guys think? I had this conversation with a friend and a client today, and they have a condo that we decided that we're going to put it on the market, and the conversation was just about how August has been this slower than usual August since the rate increase. And I'm finding deals. There are deals out there. Everyone's afraid. People are still afraid to buy. There's still stuff getting done. It's just not moving as quickly. But it was interesting. I had 2 properties that I was looking at with a client of mine that I told him to pull the trigger on 2 weeks ago. And then we finally decided 2 weeks later after waiting longer. And then they both had multiple offers. So which was fine. That's just how it went down. And it wasn't, it wasn't like a panic for us or anything, but it was interesting for me to see. And then seeing that news article come up today with inflation up. So now my question is, who I was speaking with today, we said, do you list now, or do we, try to find that buyer, look at what's happening now, price it under, get a better offer, like, or do we wait past like the September potential rate hike again, and or stabilizing? Like, so with you saying the rates are going to go up, is this kind of like, if this is happening now based on the information that we have today, do you think that first week of September that we're going to go up another 0.25 overall?
So I think it's kind of a coin flip right now. I think it, really just depends on what the numbers in early September are. Keep in mind, like the the fixed rates are tied to the bond market,
Right.
where like there's other contributing factors where, there's a great article today talking about that there's outside influences that contribute to that too, where you've got underperforming pension funds or investment funds that would be selling off their bonds, and that drives up the yield as well. You've got, other factors that kind of play into it a little bit. And so it's not just Canadian data, it's also US data as a whole, that play in. I think it's a coin flip whether, like, to me, it seemed like the 3-3, knowing they're looking at, 2% for where they're where they're really actually targeting, we're well off, like ways away. Really that beginning of September before the announcement. And there's a US Fed announcement like the day before as well. I think it's really going to be a contributing factor. I think no matter what, I know that you were having that conversation of August being slower than normal. It's still a slow month. We're a slow year. It's a slow month, and typically after Labor Day, it does always pick up.
Yes.
So to what extent that is, I don't know. And from a timing perspective on listing, like, I think it's tough. Like, I think, me personally, and I'm not a realtor or anything like that, but
you know what time it is.
No, but I think like that first weekend back after Labor Day,
it's going to be hot.
Being available to list for that period, like having your property ready to list, I think is a good time. People get, like, kids are back in school and they realize they've got extra hours in the day and they're not having to be waiting hand and foot on their kids, and they're like back to looking around. At the same time, like, I got this past 3 days, I got 4 or 5 purchase agreements in. Like, people are doing deals, and that's anywhere from like the rural properties at 300 and 200 and to like over $1 million on others. So, and that's just myself. That was, it's a very small indicator to me. Like, to your point, people are still doing deals. People aren't shying away from it. I think if you're thinking of listing your property because you need to unload it, then, like, I would say just get that property ready to sell. Like, that's really it.
Yeah. I don't think we're going to see a rate increase in September. I'm going to think they're probably going to hold it. I don't think, as I said, there's a bit of a lag between their choices and what we're seeing in the market. And I think people are certainly feeling the pinch. I think there's a lot of people that are in very challenging financial positions right now. And I think that, inflation is clearly all over the map, but I don't think an increase to the rate is going to benefit it the way it would have maybe a year ago, as they did. So I think we'll see the rates hold in September, which I think is also going to add to that fire in the market.
Absolutely.
In September.
It will.
And I think that if one domino falls, I think we're going to see a lot of properties start fire selling quickly. I think if people start moving, and that person that is trying to time the market, and they're waiting, that that 550 house is now 525, now it's down to 515. Well, maybe we give it another month, it's down to 500. Well, that one sells now at 515, and the next one sells at 525 and starts turning around. Then I think people are going to feel kind of that FOMO, and they're going to try to get into the market quickly, like to kind of scoop up those properties that are still at those lower price points. And it may not be the bottom. I'm not suggesting that we may not see another dip in sometime next year or what have you, but I think we will see an increase, as we've all said, going into the end of 2023 as far as home values. And I think once we see that first domino fall of prices starting to shift the other way, that all those people that are kind of waiting to see are going to start, the combination of it going into the fall, maybe rates staying even, and properties starting to, like, the actual available properties starting to decrease, that we're going to see, months of inventory decrease. We're going to see days on market decrease. And I think we're going to see people that are actively shopping starting to be more aggressive on their offers, which I think will only stimulate the market further. So I think as you guys have, I think we're all in agreement. Like I think September is, I personally think it's going to stay the same, but I think that's just going to add to what we're already saying is that people will feel maybe a bit more, and I don't think it's going to go crazy, but I think we will see people feel maybe a little bit of consistency where, okay, rates are the same. We can actually set a budget and maybe it'll stay. And again, there's a lot of misconception where the Bank of Canada is actually impacting people that might be fixed rate clients, like their decision to buy, when really the Bank of Canada's announcements isn't directly impacting them. There's other factors involved there, right? As Dave mentioned. So I think it's just it's the news story that gets the most headlines is Bank of Canada increases rate, right? So people just assume, oh, well, the Bank of Canada must impact every homeowner in Canada. And that's kind of, it just kind of resonates that way with people. So I think if rates stay the same, it'll kind of at least give some stability in people's heads to the market, which will maybe make them feel a bit more confident. And I think all these things will lead to increased transactions, at least in September and October, which will increase, I think, values as well.
I'll tell you something right now. I'm looking online. I'm looking at some data here that I'm providing to everyone watching Tour Rep Live right now, that in Canada, Stittsville, there's only been 35 homes sold in the last 7 days, averaging 27 days on market at a price of $806,000. 19 are conditionally sold, and there's 102 active. And that's across the board. That's any type of property. So when I look at that, I think if you are a buyer right now, you are silly to not be looking at opportunities, because that number, if you think if the rate stays the same in September and everything just kind of, like we're saying, people go back and start shopping again, then, that 102 turns into 50% of that pretty fast. And then you're back to where we were before, where it's a seller's marketing. Because right now I feel that we're in a balanced market on closer to a buyer's market, at least for this month alone in itself. So, I mean, I'm looking at this, and that's something else.
So Greg, are you saying what we said last August, like going into the last September, we said now is the time to buy, prices are going to go up in January, pull the trigger. Is it the same situation?
It's what we say in the summer, and the very few people listen, and it's just it's really intriguing to me to look at this again. Like I just brought this up out of like, let me just look at this in real time and see. So I mean, that's a lot of property, man. 102 properties in Canada right now available. Only 35 sold in the last 7 days, and there's going to be more. Like I bet you tomorrow there's going to be another 15.
Now, Greg, kind of as a, like if you're guiding a client that has a home in that area, they are looking at buying to move their family, but they're going to need to sell their home. Like, how are you advising them? Like, find a place first, list your place first. What sort of timeline are you advising them of? Like what, because it changes, right? Like with the markets of seller versus buyer market are balanced and kind of that days like, well,
it's hard to like, you really have to study this every day, and you have to be quick on it because it could change in an instant. So like if you're talking about someone selling in Canada and moving into Canada again, like upgrading or whatever, I mean, in particular in this example, I would say, but you have to look at what their outstanding balance is on their mortgage and what their debt load is. And you kind of say like, look, I think we could sell fast, but you have to list it at this price because people are looking for deals. So as long as you can be competitive for what you're offering, you'll still sell. But with what's available, I mean, everybody's looking every day all the time. So it's one of those scenarios where you could even say, you could put it on at a price that's appealing to a lot of buyers and say conditional on a certain property being available.
Yeah.
Right. So if they have something that's like $1 million, they want to sell it at, they want to sell theirs at like 650, whatever they have to do to make that work. But the thing is, the property at $1 million, chances are that's still going to be available because those are moving, very slowly right now.
Yeah, I would say like of the since we started doing this show, and I think we started doing it 2020, like around there, as far as like, you know, having Steve on and so on, like this has to be one of the worst times historically, at least over the last 2-3 years, to be listing your home. Like, it's, as you said, it's been a seller's market for a while. This is probably one of the few times where it's actually seems to be in the buyer's benefit. You can actually put in conditions. It's, you know, you can actually negotiate a bit on the prices. Homes are sitting a bit
huge, man. You can
Yeah.
negotiate huge right now.
Yeah, I've seen a few homes that are in a neighboring area that, you know, were listed at 720 originally, listed for less than 30 days and dropped down to ended up selling at 650. Now, I don't know, probably not more than one offer or two offers. And again, we're going back to what we were saying maybe a year ago, is that there's going to be people that have to sell. Like, they might have bought another home, a new build or what have you, and they have to sell their home. So there are going to be people that just have no choice but to drop that price to whatever it is. And that's also going to shift the market slightly.
Yeah, I mean, it's all a conversation, and I think, and again, going back to it, there's just so much information nowadays where it's hard for people to get a grasp on what's really important and to be working with the right people, because I think a lot of realtors, especially new ones, don't really understand like what's happening right now, and they don't know how to address it properly with their clients, because you can't. It's very difficult. Like, I mean, I've been doing this for a while, and, you know, there's some days I'm looking at stuff and it just doesn't make sense. You have to be able to sit there and kind of go through it and understand what's really going on to make it work, and be able to relay that message to your clients or your potential clients, right? If you're new and you don't understand how the numbers work or in the neighborhoods, like, you could just, you know, you need to find somebody to talk to help you.
No, we had a question comment online from a kind of two. So, thoughts on assignments in Ottawa. I know we talked about it briefly last week. And then also kind of to that point, he's asking or commenting, larger builders will not drop the price of homes to protect existing buyers. What have you been seeing from builders recently, Greg, from either desperation of like reaching out to realtors to sell, or are they like, are you finding them dropping prices or crazy stats? Like crazy offers? Have you been seeing that desperation yet from them?
This is my experience with builders. So when I was dealing with builders, mostly, I guess it was at the beginning of this year, and especially we were talking about it on the show, it was with, you know, there was one builder in particular that was kind of like the first to drop their price by almost like 100,000. And all the other builders were sitting still, and everybody, all the builders, Minto, Mattamy, you know, Glenview, Urbandale, they were all sitting there, and there was some that were saying that they hadn't had a sale in like, you know, 4 months. And I was calling my contacts, and they were like, dude, just please come in and hang out with me. Like, I'm bored. I got nothing to do. And then one of them dropped, spring came, the other ones dropped, they started selling again. And to be honest, I haven't been in touch recently, but what I can say is I've had a few builders call me and put me in touch with certain buyers asking me if I had a buyer for their property because they can't close on it. So that's been, and I imagine there's other realtors going through the same thing. Unfortunately, I didn't have anyone in either instance, but you know, that was just something to look at. I was surprised, and they're like, oh, I've got this, it's going to be built, it's going to close at this time. Do you have somebody that can buy it? I'm not going to be able to get this done. I have another client we have to sell their home probably in October. I think we're going to list soon exclusively. It's going to be a stunning property, which is fantastic, because they're going to have that to make this work. And they're closing on a new build in January, and it's a big one, and they'll be able to do it regardless, but still, you know, they don't want to do it a different way. You know, they want to sell the current property, make sure that that's done so they can have it locked in and roll their funds into the next one. But that's going to be an interesting process. I'm anxious to like see how that goes through and talk about it on the show, because, you know, they need a certain dollar amount. Well, they have a certain dollar amount in mind, and they did all the upgrades that I recommended.
The
So
pressure's on.
they're like, Greg, what do we need to do to make this happen? And I suggested, and it's true, I suggested finish the basement, put in the bathroom, do the backyard. I go, because that's what people are looking for right now in a single family home of that size. You do that, you will be guaranteed to come closer to your the dollar amount that you would like. So they've done that. And now it's kind of like the market's getting all weird, and they're like, what's up? What's going on? Are we going to get this? And I'm like, man, I'm going to do what I can, but I'm excited to go through this process and see them close on their new one and get it done. But it's going to be interesting, because what they want now is, to some, it would be considered almost 100,000 more than what it would be valued at as of like August. But we'll see. I think that we're going to get there.
We'll find out. Stay tuned.
We'll find out. Maybe I'll be fired. Don't work with Greg.
Ian
He's
was
got
saying
bad advice. Yeah.
Ian was saying that larger builders will not drop the price of homes to protect existing buyers. I can't agree or disagree that they won't drop the price, but I don't think it would be to protect existing buyers, because we have seen, we've talked about in the show previously, we've seen buyers actually like undercut previous buyers in the sense of they're actually listing the exact same model, same street for 75,000 less. So people are actually haven't even closed on that new home yet, and the same builder's listing the same unit for less. So when it comes time to appraise the property, it's actually doing exactly that. It's not protecting the existing buyers.
Yeah.
It's actually kind of throwing them under the bus. So we have seen that. So not to say that they will or won't drop the price, but I don't think they would do it to protect the buyers, because we've seen them do the complete opposite of that.
Yeah.
And they have their own reasons. Certainly, I'm not necessarily saying, I can't speak for the builders. They have their own, obviously, targets and so on. But from what we've seen a lot of buyers be put into tough situations where they've had to come up with 80, 100, 150,000 at closing because the builder dropped the price.
Fortunately, I haven't had anyone recently where that situation's happened or an appraisal come in light. However, a lot of people haven't started closing on those new builds yet. I find the fall timeframe is when they start closing on them, and into early winter, because they've that season for finishing the build is over this summer. So I'm curious to see, as we go into the fall, those people with new construction, how that plays out for their purchase prices, on what they signed 2 years ago and so forth, whether it's appraising, whether they're qualifying to even close on it, because when they will have signed that, they would have been qualifying at, 5.25, and now qualifying at, right now, today, you're qualifying at 7, if you're insured, like 7.5. So an extra, 2.25%. And if you're conventional, you're in the 8s. So it's I'm curious to see how that rolls out. I kind of find the new build closing period is kind of that September to December. At least I've found with my clients. But
we really need to make some notes and make sure that we relay this to the to our viewers. We really got to be on top of some of this data, because it's going to be important on seeing what this looks like.
Yeah, I mean, some of it's, obviously this is anecdotal from our own experience in the past and off memory, but yeah, I mean, even clients right now I have in the pipeline where they've had their builds delayed for, some of them have been delayed. I've got one client, it's been delayed 1.5 years, and
really,
it's still not closed. It's still not finished, and they've pushed it off again, saying December or January. And I don't know what that is going to look like.
Is their rate just continuing to increase then? Like, because you're going to have to lock in that rate?
And because there's no real indication from the builder on closing, so keep having to relock it in 4 months out, 4 months out, 4 months out.
So is that an
I just had this
example
conversation today. Like, I had this conversation today with the lender of like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I don't know, like, because it's possible they come. Like they're still not giving any indication. We're good until November, but I know rates are going to go up, again, or or I think we're good till October rather, but I know that rates are going to go up again. It's kind of like, do we just, if we're not going to hit October, do we relock in now because rates are continuing to go up? That way we're carried at least until December. And so,
is that like an
example
example of a builder in danger that's just like trying to keep it going and is doing whatever they can to make it happen, and then in the end it's just going to fall apart? That's terrible.
Potentially.
Wow.
I mean, they're not an unknown builder. I wouldn't say they're not one of the big guys, but they're not an unknown builder. And the house is under construction, but I don't know if they're just at that scale of a builder that they just don't have access to the trades. Obviously there was just 40,000 of them laid off, so maybe that that was a contributing factor. I don't know. But
I need a job.
But there's others like that where their builds are still delayed. They've been delayed continuously. And so anyways, we'll find out. I'll try and make a note to circle back on this in October as some of these new constructions start closing.
Anyone who's listening that is between 18 and 40 years old, like if you're looking for a new career path, become a skilled trades person. The market of skilled trade, I think, unless everything goes 3D and AI, the market in skilled trade over the coming decade is going to be massive. Like there's going to be a huge opportunity there for tradespeople. We're already lacking skilled trades, and with the amount of startups in Canada that need to be built, like that 44,000 might not, I don't know exactly. I don't have a breakdown of what positions those were. As Dave mentioned at the beginning of the show, could be anything, could be managers, could be, project managers and whoever. But skilled trades, I think, is like a huge opportunity right now. If you have, I guess I'm assuming I know there's there's schooling and then there's the apprenticeship and so on. It would take a few years, but I think if you're looking for a career change and you're willing to do that, like skilled craftsmanship, like I think there's going to be limitless potential there for career opportunities.
I just want to jump in before we forget here. Ian Way's got he keeps coming in there. I'm seeing a bunch of assignments on Facebook. We spoke about that. I don't know if not last week. I wasn't here. I think it was the week before, especially with Dave. That was the show with Dave and I when I was driving back. So the thing with the assignments on Facebook, there's more assignment groups than I've ever seen. And, to be clear, the majority of them are in Toronto and Vancouver, but they are starting to pop up in Ottawa where agents are working with builders to help with their assignment deals to get. And
builders are allowing it up till now.
Ottawa are allowing it. Yeah.
Builders in Ottawa haven't allowed it in the past, where they have in Toronto and Vancouver and some of these other markets. But for whatever reason, Ottawa kind of builders came together and kind of decided they weren't going to really let assignments go or happen, but now they are, because I think they're realizing, well, we have to allow it because we need somebody to close on this property, and the people that are asking for it are probably worried about qualifying or not able to sell their home or whatever may be. So it's I've been seeing that pop up as well.
I'll tell you one thing though, like again, before I forget, I've done more rentals this year than I've done like since I started in the business probably. And even today I went out and I'm doing another application for someone, and I'm working with somebody else tomorrow doing rentals. I just want to get into rentals quickly because it seems to be more and more common where a lot of people are not even thinking about home ownership. They're just kind of staying on that rental grind. And, the people that I'm talking to, they're renting, like we're not even having that conversation. It's like, have you looked into buying? Yeah, it's not even on our radar. We're just renting until we don't know.
Greg, you weren't here last week, but I had that chart that we talked to about the rent versus rates. Mortgage payments in different Canadian cities. It just made me think of that when you're talking about that, because it is like, I mean, rent is also, and Dave, I know you have multiple investment properties. Like I'm assuming, and I know you have a lot of investor clients. Like there has to be a sentiment amongst investors of like, we're going to wait and see. No, like there has to be, because I mean, it's not currently profitable to get into a new property, right?
No, and I mean, I haven't had any. It's kind of ironic that we're talking about this because I haven't had any investor purchases, anyone buying an investment property for months, but today got a purchase agreement for a duplex, an investor buying a duplex in a rural area. But the numbers are still great, even at where where rates are at.
But they had to do the 40 or 50% down payment though, right? Or 35?
No, so it'll still work at 80%. Like it's actually a really good property.
Okay, cool.
The numbers will still work on it with where we're at now. But no, by and large, I haven't been seeing really any investors purchasing from a property's carrying. I have a lot of conversations though with investors that are hitting trigger rates or on variable where they're trying to figure out what to do, and some that are, a lot of them though are weathering it right now, and they're not panicking, and they're waiting to see, kind of riding it out, and really just looking at it from a, this is really sucks right now, and looking on the bright side of, as on the investment property, you can write off the interest on it. So they're at least looking at it on that bright side of, at least we can write off the interest on our taxes at a higher rate to hopefully to get down their taxable income. But yeah, it's certainly challenging for those mom and pop. And I think we were talking about last week that with where rates are at right now, and a lot of the properties that are being listed, a lot of them that are being listed right now are rental properties, because the homeowners aren't able to make the numbers work. They're underwater, or it's not cash flow at all. It's risky. They want to just unload it. And that's very unfortunate when this happens, because big companies are not buying, at least in Canada, large companies are not buying single family rentals or building single family rentals. They're building condos, and that's it. And so there's a lot of a market that's being underserviced. But in the States, I was talking to somebody this week that there's companies like BlackRock that are buying up entire communities of single family homes as rentals. And I'm curious to see if that, if one of the companies here, like a CLV or one of these larger national companies, or a BlackRock even, moves into Canada and looks to do that, because it is such an underserviced community.
Wouldn't be surprised at all.
Yeah, but yeah, I think it's certainly challenging. There's a lot of hard conversations with investor clients, especially those that bought in the last couple of years, for sure.
Greg, for your clients, you said you're doing a lot of rentals. Like, what's this typical rental property that people are looking for? Are they looking for single family homes? They're looking for townhomes? Like, what is the kind of the average person that you're speaking with, at least? Obviously, it's going to be.
He's the pet guy. Remember, that's why.
Yeah,
he's the pet clause guy.
Anyone with dogs.
And I actually just sent the pet clause to someone tonight. I sent it to someone tonight.
He's Ace Ventura.
I'm like, thank you. My clients are amazing. Only caveat, pet clause. Read this.
For the love of Pete.
Let me dazzle you with my pet clause. The majority that I'm working with is for a townhome or like a 2-bedroom stacked, or a 2-bedroom 3-story. It's kind of people who are in transition, on hold. We're looking to purchase, and then we just had the conversation where it was just like completely impossible, or there was no conversation. I think it's interesting to see certain people when you explain how it is, and then they talk to a mortgage professional and realize how far away from homeownership they are. And they have no help, when they have no help, I should say. And then it's kind of like, well, that's how it is, right? And then they just go for what they do, because I mean, you can't do anything about it. But then there's a lot of people who are hopeful, like, yeah, I've got a promotion, I'm just saving. I'm going to save for another year. I know I'm going to get this big hike in my income. And then the story always goes, I think they're better now than they were before, where, the conversation used to always be like, well, when is your income going to catch up to the increase in the price of the property, right? But I think now, going back to what we were kind of getting into at the beginning of the show, where I personally think that once we see where the market goes September, October, I think that we're going to stay almost like on a flat line until like 2025. That's my prediction.
Values.
Yeah. I think we're going to flatline until then, which is fine. I mean,
stamp it, Steven. Stamp it.
Stamp that. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's kind of like, it's just a reset and everybody kind of coming to terms with the reality of what it is and, you know, moving on, and it works. And then we'll see what happens after that. You know, we've been in so much trouble for the past few years. So I don't mind it. Just these transitions are weird where we have these deep conversations about like predictions and, you know, what we're seeing in the world and in the markets.
I don't know, like, yeah, from a pricing and value perspective, you know, it's really hard to, you know, put a prediction on it, I find.
That's another thing we talked about, how it's like, this is the first time where it's been very unpredictable. Like history doesn't really exist after the last couple of years, right? So where is it going?
You did say that.
Yeah, that's something like what I said is something that I think is going to happen. But to your point, Dave, it's like, you know, I'm saying that, but chances are I'm completely wrong.
I mean, like really, I mean, at the end of the day, what's, you know, we talked about it earlier was, you know, right now people are staying away from the market because of fear, with where rates are at, where they're qualifying at. They're still wanting to, they're getting into rentals instead, staying where they're at instead, staying at mom and dad's instead. As we go through the rest of the year, whether, you know, rates go up or stay flat is to be seen. But if, you know, as things go, like we're going to hit a precipice in the Canadian economy where like things are going to start to break, like from a consumer debt standpoint of default on debt, you know, growth in GDP where we actually hit a real recession. Which the good part of that is that when we actually do, is that's when Bank of Canada starts to lower rates, and that's when the bonds start coming down, and that's when you see those rates start trickling down, which helps out the existing homeowners, which have now seen, you know, that are still in variable or want, or, you know, looking at renewing, that have gotten a short-term rate recently or that are up for renewal. But at the same time, that's when, you know, if the indicators are like, you know, the economists are saying that they kind of see by end of 2024 that prime starts coming down. And if that is the case and it continues that way through 2025, that's when we see these people that are on the sidelines start coming back, and the market and those values jumping back again. So I think you know, a lot of it really just, it's an unknown, I find, because we've all had to put away the crystal ball from because that was shot to shit, you know, this last year. But I think kind of in the next 2 months, to your point, till October, I think by October will give us a true indication of where we're going to be at.
This is one of those moments, right? Like if you look, especially on that rental graph that image that you put up, it's like when you look at that and you think of like the conversations that I'm having, it's almost like this is the precipice for the 15-minute cities, right? People just want to pay less and they want to be taken care of. And it's an interesting thought because there's a lot of us who need that. So when I look at these numbers, that makes sense. But to the general public, and depending on how your view of the world is and everything, you think that that's not a good idea. But to a lot of people, it is, especially when it comes to home ownership. And I mean, Canada's just handled everything horribly in the last few years. So hopefully we'll see that change where it's a little bit more balanced, you know, coming up. But
and for those listening, he's talking to mortgage and rental rates kind of more coming in line with one another. For those that are just listening,
because right now to rent, it's less than a mortgage payment. Whereas, you know, a few years ago, we would show you that, well, if you can have this much money down, your mortgage will be, it's cheaper to own than it is to rent. But now it's pretty much reverse. So that's why a lot more people are just kind of putting home ownership on the back burner for now. And it's not to say that it's not available. It just depends on what's available for you and what your profile is and what you can manage.
I also don't, we've we obviously talked a lot about home ownership and buying and everything, but at the same time, there is there's also nothing wrong with just renting.
No.
And being in a rental, it fits you. It allows you to move from property to property as you need to, whether it be for employment or whether it be for your family size or living of where you want to live, without being tied somewhere. And so I think there is, I want to kind of put it out there that there's a misconception as well that I think the three of us are like uber pro purchase, but there is like we do know and understand that there's a huge segment and populace that renting is actually just a good thing for you as well.
I just posted not to self plug here, but since we're here, I actually just released an article yesterday that's renting versus owning and basically like the pros and cons of each. So I put it in the chat. So if anyone wants to see it, I actually put like bullet points as to the benefits of renting, because there is a lot, as you said, Dave, like it's the flexibility of just being able to move around for a lot of people. Like even home ownership, we know most people are selling their home within 36 months changing their mortgage within 36 months, which probably at least half the time is because they're either moving or changing jobs, downgrading, upgrading, whatever. So being able to rent and not have to pay, those penalties on your mortgage and all these long term, there's an argument that it actually saves you money as well to rent. You don't have to worry about the expenses of repairing things and so on and so forth. So, there's a lot of, again, it's a lifestyle. It's your personal choice. And as you said, like us three are pro ownership, but certainly not to say I'm not pro renting as well. Like you can be pro both. I think you don't have to necessarily pick a side. Like everything now, you gotta be on team A or B. You can't be somewhere in the middle. You gotta pick
your side.
Ian's asking about 2,800 for a townhome. That was happening. It's not happening as much anymore, depending on what it is. Like you might be able to find like a brand new 3,000 square foot townhome for 2,800. Which is very rare. It's a rare model to find, but generally, 2,500 is the average in the city right now. That's not happening. You can find singles right now for 2,800.
Yeah, we should have just had Ian on as a guest.
I think so. I'll be honest. I'm kind of like, I'm surprised. I don't know if we're not doing a great job anymore, but this is the least amount of questions we've had for the amount of viewers ever in a live stream. I'm a little sad.
Yeah, you're right.
But Ian is kicking ass. Thanks, Ian Way.
His comment, he says, yes, rent until 65 and then see how long you'll last after.
Right?
I think the method of thought behind renting and not buying is that you're putting that amount to investing instead, or other asset classes. But yes, definitely relying on just OAS and CPP is pretty tough.
Pretty good, guys. Yeah. I mean, really, without Ian, we
got nothing. We got nothing to talk about. We're still screwed.
Today. We did an hour-long live stream with
just Ian.
With just Ian. So thank you, Ian, for being here, being present.
We feel lonely too. Lonely too, Ian.
Yeah. I think I'm alone now.
Well, should we stop kind of talking Ian's ear off then? Because no one else is
thank you to everyone tuning in.
I feel
okay to listen.
People that are going to watch this tomorrow, or they're going to watch this over the next week. This is a very informative, personal conversation. I think it was good. It's good.
Yes. And listen, apparently
Paul's going to tell one
listen.
joke.
They don't watch us. They don't care.
Everyone's going to ask a question.
Steven was there and then he disappeared.
Yeah, he had no sound there. I don't
know.
He'll
come back in a second.
I don't know what he was doing there.
Mood boost.
Let's go.
I was saying Paul's going to tell this joke, and then we're going to get 15 questions immediately after.
Oh yeah. Oh, you're leaving? Hold on a second. I got one last question. Okay, number one. I got 4 today. I have more, but I'm going to stick with 4. Why did Cinderella fail at basketball? Because she had a pumpkin for a coach. Number 2, what kind of shoes do ninjas wear? Sneakers.
They actually wear tabby boots.
Sneaky.
Greg knows a more silent way to move. Big Stuff knows how to be light on his feet.
Tabby boot.
Number 3, why did the archaeologist's wife divorce him? Because he was carbon dating. He was carbon dating. Excuse me.
I like that one. That's not bad.
And last but not least, why are fish easy to weigh? Because they got their own scales.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yes.
Comes with
I like
them.
that one.
Comes with them. So if you are listening on Apple Podcasts after the fact, go check us out on YouTube. Say hello. And if for everyone who's tuning in live, we actually do thank you. Thanks for being here, listening, and we'll be back next week. We're going to be back. We were supposed to have a guest on this week. He had some last minute plans. He bailed. He had some last minute plans. He said he had a meeting with someone from out of town that he couldn't avoid. So he'll be back next week. He'll be back next week. He's going to be here. He's not gone, and he's not forgotten. Okay.
We will be grilling him on the fact that he probably was on the golf course instead and forgot about
of course.
it. But,
It's all lies.
we'll make sure to get the real truth out of him.
Yeah.
I got one more. I'm going to give one more mood boost, guys, because it's great.
Right.
It's bank related.
Go.
So the bank keeps calling me to give me compliments. They say that I have an outstanding balance.
Standing.
That's it. We'll drop
on
out
the
on that one.
balance beam.
Skilled trades. I'm telling you. I'm going to have a chat with my son as soon as I get off of here. we're shooting him in that direction. Thanks, everyone, for being here, gentlemen. Have a great end to your week. And we'll be back next week with the Ottawa Real Estate Podcast.
Yeah.
See you guys.
This is